Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our Men's Mayhem podcast. And you have me, as always, Matt Cook, relationship, sex coach, health coach, researcher, 750,000 newsletter subscribers. I've been interviewed on ABC News. And we have the most wonderful Jonathan Green, who was probably the most famous dating coach in the world before he retired precipitously and moved to a obscure tropical island to actually have a family and do what you're supposed to do when you're dating, which is meet somebody and settle down. How are you doing, Jonathan?
Doing good. I'm doing very good. Excited to be
So
here.
you were telling me about Prince Harry. You heard something that I wanted to ask you more about.
Yeah, I heard. I haven't followed up on the news too much, but it came across my feed this week that him and the lady that he decided to marry are on the outs, and it's hard to believe that someone who's already divorced once convinces you to give up being a member of the royal family and spend your life writing books no one wants to read and shooting podcast episodes no one wants to listen to, that it's not going to work out. It's like, if only there'd been some red flags that maybe this wasn't a great person, right? And, you know, it's an interesting situation. So what do you think about that? It shows that even if you have tons of money and you're actually a prince, you can still end up with someone who ruins it all.
Do you think rich people are happier than anybody else?
To a point. I think that after a certain number, the money stops mattering. I think once you have, I don't know exactly what the number is. Maybe it's $100,000 a year, maybe it's 200, but I don't think there's a difference in happiness between someone who has $5 million and someone who has 500 million. I think that's where it stops, because people who have a lot of money do stupider stuff with it. Like they just buy like a boat made out of gold or a dinosaur. Like, they buy dumb
not
stuff. They don't buy things that are really
not if
cool.
they made it. If they're self-made, they don't. If they win the lottery, they do. The lottery winner effect. They lend money to all their friends. They buy a big house. They waste all their money and they go broke in a few years. But people that are self-made, I don't get that impression.
I I think some. I think you see a lot of people who, especially if they make it fast, maybe not the
Hmm.
lottery, but they start a company, get unicorn size, get $1 billion in
Okay.
investment or
Okay.
valuation.
Okay.
Also, I think
All
if
right.
someone makes the money over 50 years, it's different. But I think if they
Different.
make it over a shorter term, but you just see a lot of people who are under 50 and wealthy, they'll have like more than one airplane or
Hmm.
other dumb things that are like, a plane's a terrible investment.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a
Talk
minute.
about
You're saying two planes is bad? What about you said one? What about just one plane? I mean, you have to have a plane, don't you? You can't fly.
it
You
really.
can't fly commercial.
Yeah, it depends on how you're doing things, right? If you're running like multiple locations and you're working from the plane, it makes sense because it
Gotcha.
allows you to do more. Just like someone who hires a driver so that they can be in the car working in the
Yeah.
back seat. If
Yeah.
your time is worth more than it costs, then it makes
Yeah.
sense. So there's a financial calculus, but there's no reason to have two planes because you can't be on two planes at once.
Okay. So I think
Okay.
that rich people are happier in general in some senses, but the problem is when you have money, you're worried about losing the money. So it's not like a panacea. There's all these other concerns. And when you get more successful, you start having to deal with attorneys and accountants and investment advisors and all this. And that sounds like, oh, so what? But you also get sued a lot more. You get in, you're in court. Look at, people like the big Donald Trump, whatever you think about him, in courthouses all the time and all. Who wants to live that way, So I think it's good to live and have money and not have to be stressed out about money. But most people are stressed out. So I have a question for you here. This came in from one of our students, with who has a all access pass to our programs. And I think you're an expert on this question. So I thought about you and I thought I'd ask you. I like a certain young lady that stays with me here in the and now he talks about a campsite place or something like that. They call it a tent village,
Yeah,
which I'm assuming is
I
like
love
okay.
this. This is the best one you
We
found in a really long time.
well, this is from a guy who asked me, a few days ago. We live in different tents. She says she's divorced to someone that she separated from. She's cool with me, tends to want to just be friends, and I think she just talks about the divorce to avoid getting too close. Okay, but what I don't get is when I talk to her, she'll answer me, right? But then what she'll say is, "Do you want to go to the store for me?" I don't mind sometimes, but I don't want to, that to be the only thing that she can muster up when she speaks to me. How do you fix a crazy situation like this, huh? What do you think about that?
Oh, when you sent this to me earlier today, my wife saw the message
Uh-huh.
and didn't know it was from you. And she goes, "Why is someone messaging you about some other woman?" And I was like, so I had to read it to her. And she was like, "Oh, that's a weird one." She immediately went from like
Did she have an
suspicious to
opinion?
no, it
What was
completely.
her?
She goes, "Why are they living in tents?" Which is my first question because I'm not sure what that means. Does it mean like
Mhm.
refugee camp? Does it mean homeless encampment? What is
I don't think it does.
and
I think that there's people that live in RVs. I'm assuming that
right?
he's talking about a culture like that, but it's tents. That's what I'm
I've
assuming.
never heard of that. Okay, but that's what I'm saying. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I've heard of the
Yeah.
RV one. I wasn't, but he's made it sound like it's a place we should have heard of. Like, oh,
Okay,
I live in
so
tents.
I'm gonna just look it up, but I don't want to tell you where it is because of privacy. But I'm gonna look it up on a separate window here just to see if I can find something. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I guess it's sort of for individuals who are otherwise what we would call unhoused. You're right.
Okay, so there's a lot of other moving parts in that type of situation, which are whenever someone's going through that, especially a woman, usually it means there's something else going on, right? A lot of times there's a bad situation. You're leaving, and there's a lot of complexity. Because it was also like, oh, she only talks to me to go to. I mean, long and short of it, she's not interested in this guy on any level. Like, she's not attracted to him in
No,
any way. She's not sending him any
no,
signals.
no,
She's
no.
not living
She
there
talks
by
to him,
choice.
and he's very
So
desperate for conversation and,
she
and
didn't come
companionship.
in and um, choose to put her tent next to his. She was probably assigned a tent or however it works. So that's why I was asking that question because it didn't sound like she'd sent him any signals other than being near him, but not by choice. So my advice in this situation is to let it go because there's nothing there. Like
Mhm.
she hasn't sent any signals other. He's like she never wants to talk to him, and when she does, she's like, "Oh, can you go to the store for me?" Which is, "Can you go away?" The one thing she asked him to do is leave. So there's nothing
Well,
there,
she said,
and
"Can you go to the store for me?" Well, who wouldn't want a flunky? Why not? It's kind of demeaning.
but also the one thing she asked him to do is something he has to do far away. So it's not
Yeah, go away,
like
go to the store.
it's
Yeah,
not. It's actually worse than can you do something around the house? 'Cause at least then you're around the house.
yeah.
So I would say that this is when you're looking for everything to be a sign, everything starts to look like a sign.
Hmm.
And this is very much. I'm not sure that this is the friend zone. This might be a lower level than friend zone. This is like the stranger zone or the distant neighbor zone. You cannot start a fire when there's no spark at all. There's no sign. It sounds like there's something going on with the divorce, whether it's new or not. I'm not sure why he makes it sound like she's making up the divorce. Most people don't do that. People,
Well,
if they
he
don't
says
want,
that
woman doesn't
I
want
believe
to
she
say,
uses
say,
that divorce talk as an excuse to not get too close. That's what he says about it.
it's not what people use though. People will usually say, I'm married
Hmm.
or I'm in a long distance relationship or I'm a
Hmm.
lesbian way before they'll say I'm divorced, which means I'm available.
Yeah.
So it's just
Okay.
not a very
Yeah,
common lie.
and I'm sorry that you have to stay here in a tent village. That's kind of bad, really. He doesn't sound like he's upset about it. And we have scholarships for people that can't afford the full payments that we have to charge. But I don't know if he's on one or not. I don't ever ask. But yeah, I think that I think he should try to meet somebody else. Try to. That's all. Yeah. Well, so let's see. I think I wanted to ask you about something else, or I want to talk to you about something else. There's this kind of a common thread here with women that are saying, "Oh, I'm just so tired of, my husband, my boyfriend, so tired of men." She says, "We have 3 kids. I was slightly overweight when we met, and I just sort of gained weight as we had more kids. But over the last few months, this is the critical thing. She says, I tried really hard to lose weight, and I'm below where I weighed when I met my husband, and he seems happier. We have sex more. He's nicer, more romantic, and it makes me so angry. I hate him. I can't stand him. And all this because I've lost weight? I'm so devastated. He's treating me so differently. I feel like he never really loved me. My feelings for him are not going to be the same, never be the same. I don't know how to get over this if I even can. Isn't that an interesting one? So she lost weight. Her husband like gets all excited about her, and then she gets really angry and hating on him, because it seems so like, oh, it's just some pounds, and all of a sudden, like, I'm a different person. Come on, right? Isn't that an interesting?
This is a shrew in search of a problem.
Well,
She's literally,
I don't know.
my husband's so nice to me, I hate it. And
Yeah,
it's such a weird way to find a problem when there isn't one. Things have never been better between me and my husband. I hate it. I read this one to my wife as well, and she's like, I was like, well, do you like me more when I lose weight? She goes, yes. So it's this thing she's saying of I like him no matter his weight. It's not true. It just isn't. Because there's a weight for everyone that you go, okay, he weighs 500 pounds, 800 pounds, whatever the number is, there's a number where you go, it's my limit. It's just factual,
yeah,
right? It's like,
yeah,
oh,
right.
I have to,
Yeah.
I have to hose him down every time he goes to the bathroom like an
400
elephant.
pounds is too high. 300 pounds, I might stay.
But that's the thing. So she's
Well,
basically saying she never said it was bad before, right? She said, oh, I changed and she changed first, right? She lost weight. She made a dramatic change and she's upset that he reacted to her change. She decided to be more attractive and she's upset that he responded to her behavior. So the problem is that she has something going, this is a mental issue she has because he hasn't done anything wrong. What she's really saying is, it's like if your wife walks in the room wearing your underwear and she goes, why are you looking at me like that? It's that trick women do where they show a lot of cleavage and go, don't look at my cleavage. Except it's your wife doing it. So she's like, dressing up sexy. Why are you acting like I'm dressed up sexy? It's like a riddle. And obviously there's no right answer. So she created a scenario, right? She's like, I'm going to dress more attractive. I'm sure she's showing off her new body. She's proud of the weight she's
right,
lost.
right.
And then she's upset that he's reacting to that. What she wants for him. Let me tell you imagine what she would have written if she was, I lost a bunch of weight and my husband hasn't even noticed. Imagine that
Yeah.
post. Because I
Yeah,
guarantee
right.
that.
There's no win here, right? I mean, she gains weight,
yeah.
she loses weight, whatever it is, she's not happy.
She's looking for a fight and she's having to create from a really, probably the worst thing I've ever heard. It's like, oh, my husband treats me so good. I hate him for it, is what she's saying. I wish he would go back to treating me. And the thing is, it's not true. She's lying. Nobody wants to be ignored by their husband. And I can tell you, the age, it's such a red flag. Mid-30s, this is where this happens to a lot of women. They start to say, oh, you know what? He's not giving me much attention. I'll go back on the market. It'll be so easy. Now there's apps like Bumble where I get to message the guy first. And it is a rude awakening. Being single in your 30s is so much different than being single at 20. It's a whole different ball game.
Well, she has children. I mean, and she has a 6-month-old.
Yeah,
three
she's got
kids,
fresh
so
children.
it's kind of
She's
hard,
like,
kind of
"I got
tough.
this." And then what do you think is going to happen? She goes out and shows off her new body, and the guy's like flirting through. Hey, are you flirting with me because I lost a bunch of weight? And the guy's like, well, what's happening here? So there's either something else going on which she hasn't revealed in this, or she was just looking for a reason to be upset and couldn't find one, so she made up a really bad one. The guy hasn't done anything wrong, not even close.
Well, there's one I wanted you to ask about too. I think I put it in your chat thing there.
Okay.
That I thought we could talk about. It's sort of on similar lines.
Let me pull it up really quick because I had one I was looking at
Well,
and thinking about,
okay.
but I'll do the one you want first.
Okay.
Just opening the tab. There we go. All right. Oh yeah, I love this one. The older I get, the more I resent men. In the past 5 years, I've been actively dating and seeking a serious relationship. I've found that most men I meet are only interested in bedroom fun or the possibility, which is extremely frustrating. Even going on multiple dates with some men, it seems as soon as you become intimate, their interest fades and they're not looking for long-term commitment. This left me feeling frustrated and uninterested, and the time and effort of dating. It's also given me a negative view on men in general to the point where I'm struggling with my feelings towards them.
Yeah, I
At
could see
you know,
that.
and
I
I
could see
think that
that.
it's because most guys I meet are from dating sites, but then I met a guy organically. What a strange word. I'm never sure what that means, like organically, because it's like it's not really organic. So
At the organic food store.
I'm starting to feel resigned to the idea of being alone for the foreseeable future. But
Hmm.
because I become so sad when I see my friends in normal relationships, then I start to think maybe I'm the problem. It's so tiring.
All right,
Uh,
let's stop there for a
so
second. Let's stop there for a second. I also feel like she says I see my friends in normal relationships, and I'm so sad. Then I start to think that maybe I am the problem, right?
she
Uh,
is.
she is the problem. Well, I don't understand what should shock some woman about men wanting sex. I mean, men want sex. Uh, Men and women could be matched in libidos. Some women have a high libido, some have a low libido. As women get older, the libido tends to fall, although not always. But men generally, in general, are pursuing women for sex, and women's, they tend to be the gatekeepers. That's how it is. I'm sure her mother taught her that. So she says just their interest fades and they're not looking for long term commitment. Okay, so she dates someone and they sleep together, and then she has a discussion with them and they say, I'm not looking for long term commitment. What does she expect them to say at this point? I
So
remember talking to a buddy of mine about he was having, his wife was pregnant. He was having these doubts about being a father. And I said, I wasn't ready to be a father. Nobody's ready to be a father. You never feel ready to be a father. That's just how it is. And I think it's the same thing, with some guy that she's with, that she sleeps with, and, she has this discussion. He may not like, oh, I want a long commitment. But if she keeps seeing him, he falls for her and he becomes her boyfriend. What's the big problem here? The problem is she wants to have this negative discussion very, very soon. And she has a very negative view on men who want sex. That's what I think. And I think she needs to become more realistic about things. And when she's with someone for a while, they fall for each other, they have a relationship. That's the commitment. You don't have to talk about it. You just do it. Do you
so
agree?
I think of the old adage, once is unlucky, twice is the coincidence, three times is enemy action. If 20 relationships in a row all end and as soon as we sleep together, the guy jumps ship, what's the common
Maybe
factor?
she's bad in bed.
It's
She'd have to
that
be
is a
very bad in
possible.
bed.
I don't think you'd have to be that bad in bed because there's a lot, like if you're moderately bad in bed and you immediately go, "Do you want to marry me?" What?
Yeah.
So you could be jumping to that. I think that it's obvious that she is picking a particular type of guy. As a lot
Okay.
of dating coaches say, she's picking Chads. She's picking guys with lots of options. She's picking guys who have high short term relationship characteristics. I'm sure she's targeting guys who are good looking or have a lot of money or have a lot of options. And that's the type of guy who is very particular about who he'll settle down with, especially guys who are coming off a divorce. I mean, she has the vibe of someone who's late 30s, early 40s. I don't know for sure. She doesn't say her age, but that's what it
Right.
sounds like
Notice
because
that.
5 years is
Notice
a
that.
very long time
Yeah.
for someone in their 20s, but it's not so long if you're in your 40s. All of these point towards her picker. Every single
Oh,
guy I pick leaves after we sleep together. Keyword is I pick. She's
okay.
in control of who she goes on dates with. So I
I see
think
that.
that
I see that. So you feel she's picking the wrong people. I think it's like the best movie ever in a way. The emerald glasses in the Wizard of Oz. She's seeing everything through these glasses. So she even says, I'm starting to feel resigned to being alone. I receive unsolicited, explicit messages, which adds to my disillusionment. She sees everything that men are doing as some negative, awful thing. Everything. She's seeing everything that way. So how could she pick the right guy if she's seeing every man so negatively about everything?
you
I think
start
that,
to
yeah,
you start to have a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If
right,
you
right.
keep thinking every guy is a creep, then all you'll see are
Yeah,
creeps.
exactly.
And
It's the
you'll
glasses.
also, plenty of guys are, but you'll also misinterpret the guys. We've all had people misinterpret things we say and really hear something we completely different say. It's happened to everyone. So I think that Also, so she's talking about like on dating sites, guys send me explicit messages. Well, what does your profile say? That's creating that environment because guys don't send explicit messages to every single woman on those sites, right? There are certain women who are something
Hmm.
about their profile. And I don't know what it is
Okay.
because this is something
Okay.
that I've never done,
Okay.
but it's not happening to everyone, right? It's happening to some people.
Well,
And I
we
read a
have at
study about this last week.
our help desk, we have women answering, not and men too, but we have women answering messages, and men will sometimes send some horn dog explicit message just for really kind of rando, you know?
But not all men. There's a
No,
certain group
just a
of men,
few. Right.
and that's somehow these men are drawn. They're not, but they're. I don't think these men send it to everyone. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they
I
machine it.
doubt
But I
it.
feel like they send it to some profiles and not others. There's just something going on that, especially if her profile has language like this of like, oh, I'm starting to think there's not a man out there for me. Guys are like, okay, fine, right? They're sending a certain signal. Goes, okay, fine, send her the dirty message. That's what they're hearing in the brain. Not that it's appropriate. I don't think that behavior is okay.
No.
But also, there's a certain point you have to, at some age, talk to people before you sleep with them rather than after. There's a simple thing you can say. I only sleep with guys I'm in relationships with.
Yeah.
Easy.
Nobody tells her she has to jump into bed with somebody. Nobody makes her do that.
She makes it, she's like, because the hardest one is she's like, oh, I make some guys wait for a couple of dates. That
Yeah,
means
that's
most of the time she's a first date girl.
terrible approach. Terrible approach. And I think a lot of women are doing this because they're dating men who they feel have lots of options. So they've got to jump into bed with a guy to kind of win him. And that's a really, really bad place to be, honestly.
Let me
Yeah, I
ask
agree
you a
with you.
question. When you hear the word multiple, what number do you think of?
For terms of dates before sex.
She says I go on multiple dates.
Oh, huh. You mean for the same guy?
Well, that's what she says. Even if I wait multiple dates to sleep with
Oh,
him.
I would say three. You know, I've talked about this. Like 3 dates
Yeah,
is a
that's what I
good.
think she's saying. I think she's
Yeah.
saying two or three. So for her, making a guy wait is like, oh, sometimes I make him wait from Friday to Sunday night.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So it's
I mean, she
not
probably should just
really.
have a rule where she just goes only sleeps with the guy she's been seeing for like a month. That might be better,
Yeah,
you
you
know?
need some type of policy that's
Yeah.
longer. If you're getting,
Yeah.
you just have to raise the screening test because guys who
Right.
are only interested in that will only wait a certain number of dates, then they'll jump ship. That's the way
So
to
you get rid
screen
of
them
them.
out.
Yeah, you get rid of them real quick. That's right.
Yeah, these guys are not what you want. You're attracting the wrong guy. You're screening in the wrong guy. You need to just start screening those guys out and screening guys who are looking for relationships because they're out there.
What do you think about men who sleep with a girl on the first date? What do you think about that girl? And do you think that they end up in a successful relationship sometimes? Or is it a problem?
Uh, well, I married one, so
Yeah.
it can work out.
Okay.
So I
I,
think that it's, but
I knew
also
that.
I think that maybe that's the exception that proves the rule, if you know what I mean. Like it's not
Yeah. I don't think it's
what I'm,
normal. It's just
yeah,
not.
it,
You're in a very atypical situation.
yeah,
I
that's
won't
what I
get
think
into.
is that
It's
it's
very
not
very
always,
unusual. Yeah, it's not. If I dated a woman, she just slept with me right away. I would look at her as a playmate, right? I would look at her as a sex, buddy, but I wouldn't take her seriously as a
oh no.
girlfriend. Just wouldn't. Not generally.
No, most of my girlfriends, we slept together in the first date. There's
Yeah, I
something
never
about me
and generally didn't.
that just, I don't know why. It's either first date or never. There's no middle. Women like either, I think after the first date, they realize I got to get out of here. This guy's terrible, or they sleep with me. There's
No, it
no
was
middle.
always for me.
There was
For me,
zero
it
or
was
time.
it was a third date. You know,
I think that women have an asset, right? You have control. In the start of the relationship, women have more control. Before you sleep together, a woman is in control.
they're
After you sleep together,
gatekeepers. The guy
that's
wants
more
to get in, and she's got to defend the gate, to some degree,
don't
right?
yeah, don't give up that
Yeah.
asset too
No.
soon because
No.
as
See,
soon as you do,
don't we sound like our grandmothers probably sounded like when you say that? But it's true for the woman.
well, I think about my daughters and I think about what I'll
Yeah.
tell them, my
Right.
approach to life with them, and I think about being on both sides of it is that if if you just want to have a bit of fun,
Yeah. That's what I mean.
then you act one way. But if you want to have a long-term relationship, you have to act differently.
That's what I'm saying.
This is
I exactly right. If I was going to sleep, if a girl is going to have sexual stuff with me right off the bat, it's great. Of course, I'm going to be thrilled about it, but I'm not going to look at her seriously as a girlfriend. I want to pursue. I want it to be challenging. I want to get to know her. I want to all those things. And without that, it's just so she's not letting men pursue her. She's not making them pursue her, winning her over. She's not doing any of that classical, what they used to call courting behavior. She should be doing that.
so when I was at my most wildest, one of my rules was if we don't kiss on the first date, there's no second date. And if we don't sleep together by the third date, there's no fourth date. So if you have
Kissing
a
on the
rule,
first
right,
date, I'm all for it. I'm all for that.
if you don't sleep with anyone in the first 3 dates, you would screen me out, which is what a lot of women are looking to do because I was
Right. Sure.
just too wild. And that's what I'm saying is I think,
Yeah.
how would you screen me out and screen in someone who's more long-term relationship in it?
Yeah, just wait. Just make them wait. That's all. Make them wait.
Yeah.
Talk to them.
Simple
Go on
solution.
dates. It's very simple. And it's so funny because these I don't know what you call them, the rules. I don't mean the rules girls like we talk about the rules, but there's that book, The Power of the Puss.
Yeah.
Basically, it tells men she's been very popular. This woman, wait 6 months, make him wait, make him help you move. Call him in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and make him come over to help you out with something. And men would go along with that, and that's extreme.
Yeah.
And I don't advocate manipulative behavior like that, but I think making a man wait and
somewhere in
pursue
between.
is somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between
Yeah.
first date and 6 months. The concepts from that book are not wrong. She just overuses them. There's something in between where
Yeah.
it's the same thing now where people are doing the orange test. The idea is sound to have
What
certain
is the
things you
orange
do
test?
see, where you ask your boyfriend to unpeel an orange for you,
Oh.
even though that's been going around on social media. We talked about this
Okay.
last week because it's so
That's right,
silly.
we
It's
did.
easy to
I
do.
remembered
It's
it
the
now.
exact
I
type of
remembered
thing you should delete from your memory.
Yeah.
The idea, without the camera there, it's kind of sound because you want to see if someone will help you when times are bad and if someone
Yeah.
will help you even when you don't need it. But it has to be for a place that's non-manipulative. I think once you're filming it, it stops being authentic. But the idea of trying to figure out who a person's true self is legitimate. And that's what a lot of questions and different tests that we do early on in dates and seeing like how do you treat
Yeah.
the waiter? How do you talk about your exes? That's what we're trying to do
Right.
is figure out someone's true
And you
personality.
want to do that before you're mentally into somebody. You can be a bit objective early. So you should look
So
for
this-
signs to disqualify somebody because once you're into the relationship, you're not going to. And if you've ignored those signs, they're going to get worse and worse. And this is why there's so many people have bad relationships because they didn't do this test and they ignored the results and they got emotionally involved too soon, despite what probably their friends all saw right away.
That's what I wanted to talk about, which is red flags.
Red flags.
A lot
Good.
of
That's the
people-
theme of the day. Red flags.
See a red flag and
Mm-hmm.
ignore it because she's so hot or he's so rich or tall or he has just like the greatest Adam's apple or like a super chiseled chin, all these different things that are so masculine. And those are all short-term relationship characteristics. And why do you think, or how, maybe this is a better question. How can people overcome this subjective part of their brain, the lizard brain,
Mhm.
that looks past red flags? And so often, like most relationships that fail, it's not a surprise.
So the
You can ask, like, three questions
so
about
one
the
thing you
first
can
date.
do, one thing you can do. Nobody wants to do this. We talked about this about 12 years ago, I think, and Skip the Date. We actually talked about this. But one thing you could do is you can bring your girlfriend over to meet one of your friends earlier than you normally would. And then you could take your friend aside and ask them what they really think and try to really say, I want to hear anything bad that you see. Really, tell me. Nobody wants to do that. But your friends see immediately that she's not right for you, her problems are false, that you don't see at all. So that's if you really want to know, that's a great test.
That's a tough one to be the friend because I would
Well,
think,
I know.
is this a true? Because I've been in a situation before where friends
Hmm?
asked my real opinion about a girl who we'd broken up with, and I was like, I'm so glad you guys broke up. She's the worst. And he goes, oh, we just got back together an hour ago. And I'm like,
No, I
this is a
understand.
fun game.
I don't say that
So-
you should tell her to break up. I'm saying anything that
No,
you
we
find
had
about her
already
that
broken up. So I thought
Yeah.
it was clear.
I just
So
mean asking the friend for specific behavior that is a red flag, not whether I should sleep with her or not, or whether I should live with her or not, or whatever. That's all.
but it's so hard as you're going, yeah, but you always say that, right? Yeah, she's crazy, but she's
Of course you
so
do.
hot.
Of course you do. Of course
And
you do. Of course.
listen,
Yeah.
I went so far down that rabbit hole. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but I dated a girl who'd just been released from being sectioned. I forget the American name for this, but this is where you're held against your will in an asylum.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And she just gotten out, and I'm talking earlier that day.
She was involuntarily committed. So we say in the U.S., involuntary
For a while.
commitment.
Yeah, that's it. She
for a
was
while.
for a while. It wasn't the 72 hours and they let you go one. This was like a 4 to 6 weeks, I think, or maybe 3 months,
Okay.
where she'd gotten upgraded. It's like they're between jail and prison. She'd gotten upgraded to the more serious one.
Yeah.
And she was just talking about she's still in love with another guy that had been in there with him. And she's like, oh, he has the cutest scar around his neck from when he tried to unalive himself. And I was like, this girl's so hot. I'm ignoring all these like tier 1 red
Well,
flags.
she probably
like
was very
nuclear
hot,
red
but
flag.
she was hot, and the sex was hot. Everything would be hot. It's just a
didn't
bummer
fit.
for a relationship. Okay.
Right. To my regret, a lot of there was just
You
like
probably
so
avoided
much.
you avoided a lot of drama. If you'd slept with her, she could have, done
It
really
was just
bad
like
stuff to you.
But that's the thing is that you ignore all of this
Yeah.
stuff because you're not thinking it's really hard to think
Okay.
logically. Now,
Okay. So the only way you could think logically is if you have options. If you have a process of meeting women, then you're going to be able to look at this woman somewhat objectively at the very beginning because you know that there's another date that you're going to be meeting another girl this next Saturday, and you have a process of meeting women. When I was dating, I had a process of meeting women, and it helped me a great deal because I was able to go out with women and not have to feel like this is my one date a year because I had a process of meeting women, which was done all in person, by the way. And then I would go on dates with those women and I just go and meet more women. Wasn't that hard? So I think the problem is when you don't have a process to get dates to find more women, you tend to latch on to the one that you have, and then you're not realistic and you're ignoring the red flags, right? So I think having a process to meet women is the primary way that you can maintain your objectivity and avoid getting ensnared in a bad relationship. Do you agree or disagree?
I think this is good. I was thinking about this as the idea of dating in series or dating in parallel. Men more often than women date in series. They meet a woman, they stay with her until it works or doesn't work, and then they start the next one.
Yeah.
I believe that leads to a lot of infidelity because 10 or 20 years later, you suddenly have options. You're the more successful person at work. The young new woman at the office is flirting with you and you've never experienced that before because you made a binary decision. This woman or alone is the decision. However, if you're dating multiple people, you have multiple people that are in the cycle of who you're going to choose to be in a relationship with. Now you're choosing the winner. It's a tournament system. And that means anytime you're choosing the best of 10, you're always going to get a better result. That doesn't mean you're sleeping with all 10. I'm not talking about having a roster.
No,
I'm talking
I
about
didn't.
you go
I
on a first or second date with a bunch of people and you go,
that's right.
you have like rounds of, okay, who do I want to see more? The reason I was dating like 6 or 7 women when I met my wife, and I kept canceling dates with the other women to spend more time with my wife. It's easy. That's how you can tell. And she sometimes is like, asks questions like, oh, how do like, what about if you met another woman? It's like, I have no interest in that because I already know. I already had a tournament of champions and you won. So it comes from a very different place and that was very intentional on my part, was I want to be sure. And I saw my wife in comparison when we first were dating. So I don't need to compare to other women.
Completely different in a sense. I would only date one woman at a time, but I had a process where I could, in a few days, I could have a date with somebody new that was attractive. So that gave me the power when I was, on a date. If it wasn't going well or I found some red flags, I didn't feel like I had to have another date with this woman. And too often we talk to men who have one date a year, or they have just one woman they're interested in and she doesn't even know that he exists. She knows she serves coffee or at Starbucks, or she's a marketing manager at the company and she doesn't even know he exists. And, he has this fantasy life around this girl. I see that a lot. So red flags in something early on. What would you say Okay, I'm going to give you 5 red flags, and let me ask you if you see that any of them are most common at the beginning that someone should look for. Okay, frequent lying, put downs, unwilling to compromise, not willing to talk about stuff, excessive jealousy. Okay, so lying,
I think
put downs, unwilling to compromise, not being willing to talk about stuff, jealousy. What do you think is the biggest red flag?
so. I don't think you're gonna notice lying very early on.
No,
It just you need more time. So lying is the kind of thing that if someone's lying to you, you won't know for a while because you
right,
don't know them well enough to have a baseline.
right.
However, I do think the one put downs,
Hmm.
there are people that use dating techniques which are built around insults or like reverse compliments and tricky things where they like
Negging, as they
say
call it in the
something,
game, like that.
yeah, like a negative compliment. And there's a lot of versions of that. That's just what guys call it. Women do it as well too. Women do it to
Yes.
each other more than men.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a male invention. Men just
I
gave a
think you
name for
see
it.
it. You see the put downs early on when she talks about
Yeah.
other people in her life.
Yes.
She's
If
not going
she
to talk
talks
about
about
putting down you. She's going to be talking about other people. And if you hear a put down, it's just like when I'm going to hire somebody. If somebody I'm going to hire talks about their boss or their employment negatively, I'll never hire them.
someday that could be you they're talking about that way.
Exactly. It will be. Yeah. So what do I want that? I
So
want someone who's like thrilled with their life. And they may say, well, my boss was fantastic. He had to make a difficult decision. I was one of them laid off. Like that's what I want to hear. But if she puts other people down, so you could give her if you're really into doing this, which you should be, give her an opportunity to talk. Listen to how she talks about her family, her friends, her coworkers, and listen for put downs.
yeah, people are always on their best behavior about you early on. That's a really good
Right.
one. I look for, yeah, other things is like if they've had a lot of bad relationships
Yeah.
or
How do you know?
there's someone they'll say you don't ask it, but
Like the
they'll
woman
kind
we
of
talked about earlier.
well, there's like ways the way people tell stories. If someone's really young,
Okay.
all of their stories about them and their parents. If someone's
That's
like
right.
18, most of her stories, oh, my parents did this, me and my
Yeah.
parents did that.
Right.
But if every story she has is with a different guy, that's how you know.
Yeah.
I
In other words, it should be about and ideally it would just be her ex, right? I mean, people, they say shouldn't talk about your ex, but you can't help if your life was that way. If she had a boyfriend for a number of years, that would be ideal.
yeah. I the thing about that is I also don't want someone who's still in love with their ex because I've
Right.
been on a lot of dates with women where they go on a date with me and then they get back with their ex
Oh,
before
you're
our
just
next
yeah, you're just women do that all the time when they break up with
I'm
somebody.
rock bottom. They see I'm at the bottom of the rung, they go, I'm going back.
Yeah, they
Like I
just
went
want
I went one
evidence
step
that
too
they're
far and one
attracted.
step back.
They don't even know it. They want evidence that they're attracted to other men, and then they go back. Um,
Yeah.
Jealousy is another one on this. I think you don't see that early on as much. Not having discussions, difficult discussions.
Yeah, people
That's
who you have to have rules or the things that like are acceptable and unacceptable in a relationship for you, whatever they are, and they're different for other people. Some people, it's I won't be with someone who shows up late because it's a form of disrespect. Some people don't care. You
right.
have to be with everyone has flaws. You have to be with a woman or a man whose flaws are the things that don't annoy you. That's the secret.
They're cute. So one of the fundamental elements in a man-woman relationship is basically what I'll just say, and I don't mean this in a BDSM way, but dominance and submission. One that is more dominant and a partner that is more submissive. And so this is a woman who writes in. She says, my husband is 100% dominant. He does 100% of the work in bed. He gives me multiple O's till I can't take it anymore. Blah, blah, blah. You just stare at me and then sex will happen. He can be a little rough, but it's okay. I love it. We both respect each other, but, basically he's very, very dominant. And she says, I like it that way. She says, you have to respect each other's bodies, know each other's limit, but it really works for us. And I feel that type of a dynamic is present in all relationships, all of them. There's one partner that is more dominant than the other one. And, you have to kind of know what you want and what you're up for. And I think a lot of relationships don't work when they're at each other, sort of in a struggle for power in a sense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've dated women that were very dominant. I was like, I'll try this one. I'll mix it up. And it's there's good and bad about it. Like you don't have to make any decisions. It's like, oh, I make decisions
Yeah.
at work all day long. I'm home, I don't have to
Yeah.
make decisions. So there's something to be said for that.
Right.
And it's an interesting idea, but this the bedroom dynamic, the way she described it, I was trying to understand if she like didn't like it or like it
She
because
likes it. She said she really loves it.
yeah, when people say rough, there's such a wide range of what that can mean.
Right.
And I'm not, so it's just like it can mean something like, oh, sometimes he pulls my hair a little bit, all the way up to like we're tying each other up and setting each other on fire. Like it's such a wide range. But I think it's really important that you're compatible in that area too. Like I've been with women who they want me to do stuff. I go, I'm not doing that. There's this idea that it's only women who say no to stuff. That's not true at all. There's a lot of stuff women ask for that I go, there's no way
Right.
I'm doing that.
Right. Well,
You know,
I
and
I think she says that I wouldn't have married him if he was not dominant. And
yeah,
I think that women are more attracted to men who are dominant. Now,
yes,
some men are not dominant and they still can find women, but they probably will find women who are dominant because they're naturally submissive. That's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I think in the end, women are more attracted generally to dominant men. It's just how it is. That's how they're wired.
yes, yeah, probably
Um,
true.
yeah. So here's there's a very interesting one. You know my feelings about um, explicit materials and everything. I feel like it can be very harmful to the brain and the body. She says, yesterday, my boyfriend and I mutually agreed to watch this together while having sex. We thought it would be
Uh-oh.
super fun, different. I was on board totally. Okay. I
Red
told
flag,
him, you know,
red flag, bad idea.
bad idea. Why do you say that? Before I
Okay.
get to the rest of the story, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I can tell you that there's something that was in the movie that one of them liked and the other one didn't.
And I've never done this with any woman. I would never would, by the way.
I
think
can
it's a
tell you
terrible
right now
idea.
that you take
Terrible
any
idea.
two guys, every guy likes something different in their dirty movies. It's always slightly different. So there's always
Right.
one where the guy, like you go, one guy goes, oh, what you like is too extreme or too weird. And that's it. That's all it takes. And I know, here's the second thing I know. And this is, again, this is just me. And I know that younger people or other people, it's different. But for me, there's a huge space between what I would see in a dirty movie and what I want to do in real life. I have a very big delineation between fantasy and reality. I know you've told me that I'm the exception, not the rule, that there are people that the two things merge. But like for me, it's if I saw something in a dirty movie, it's like that's the reason I'm watching it in a movie is 'cause I would never want to do it in real life. Like there's a separation there between
Mhm.
fantasy and reality.
Well, I
That's
think
me.
that's
Those are-
healthy. I think it's healthy because I think a lot of people today are trained to believe that if you have a fantasy, you should act it out in reality. And that's
yeah, that's
totally
crazy
wrong.
to me.
Completely wrong.
Yeah.
Completely wrong.
That's how you end up wearing like a saddle or a leather dog mask, and it's like that's no. Like there's a separate those things out, please. So for me,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
see. However, here's what I think is going to happen. She's going to go. There was something in the movie that I thought was too far,
Okay.
and he liked it. Or the woman, oh, the woman had big boobs, so maybe I need big boobs, or something like that. I don't think
Okay.
it ended in it was
Nothing
the best,
good.
and we
Nothing
never felt
good.
closer. I doubt it's going
Okay.
to end with, and we never felt closer.
Okay. Okay. Next thing. Instantly. Okay. So they watch girl. So she says, instantly, I recognized the girls were so drastically different than me in appearance. They both had that super done up IG model look. Obviously, the social media site. Both girls also had, big chests, and I have a small
Yep.
one, and it's something that I'm deeply insecure about. In fact,
What?
I self-harmed about it before,
Whoa.
before when I was younger. Yeah. And I did therapy, and I still want cosmetic work. Yeah. Yeah. So she says deeply insecure about her chest size. My boyfriend came in about 2 minutes, and he said that it was because not only was I watching two ladies, but I looked down and saw you. And he said one of the actors had an amazing body, which is so drastically different from mine that I would pay thousands for it if I could, this woman writes. So now I'm
So-
very off put by the idea of being intimate because I
Whoa.
just feel like he's not into me. My appearance, I feel closed off from him. It's very sad. We were doing it once a day. But now I'm thinking, God, how do I compare to these women? I don't. You see, bad, 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 bad.
She's projecting. Notice that most of the issues have nothing to do with him. She already had issues when she was younger. She went to therapy when she was younger. All this stuff
Yeah.
predates this relationship.
Yeah.
All
And I would
he
say
did,
most women are very insecure about their appearance. That's normal. Not to cut yourself, but I think women are very insecure about their appearance in general.
what he got was a short-term pleasure for a long-term price.
Oh, man. He probably
He
lost the
basically
whole
got
relationship.
a really good. He sounds like he got a great 2 minutes in exchange for a lifetime of neurosis.
2 minutes is what he said. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
number of different she expressed so many different things in that one short thing. Oh, one woman's too pretty, the other one's too pretty. He thought one was pretty. He looked at me. He said the right thing. He goes, and I like that you looked pretty too. Like he knew enough to at least say that, and I also noticed you.
Well, he said
It
that
says
he
that-
was into these two, the watching, but then he looks down and that's when he gets off. Yeah, I saw you too, you know, so.
Yeah. Okay,
That's nice.
You can yell me all you want and tell me it's raining. It's not rain. That's what's happening here. That guy just knows enough to throw a lie at the end.
All they had to do is not have that, watching that at all. They could have told each other stories and fantasies and, you know, would have been just fine.
Yeah,
This is a
once
bad mistake.
It never. I don't think it ever goes well when you watch dirty movies together.
No.
I just have never heard of. I've never heard of anyone being like, and it saved our marriage. Like, it made us feel
Well,
closer.
I'll give you an example of when it helped, though. This is a very extraordinary, but there used to be a video series, which this is an old thing where they used to sell, you know, the term marriage manuals. Have you ever heard that term?
I've heard the term marital aids.
Marriage
marriage
manuals were books that were sold, pornographic books that were sold as an idea to help you, you know, with sexual requirements of marriage, right? But they're really porn, you know, just sort of. And so they came up with a video equivalent called the Better Sex Series, which they advertised in the places like the New York Times. And this was when I was new in my marriage. And so I bought them and we watched them together because I felt like I wanted her to be more adventurous. And instead of telling her to be more adventurous, which I found didn't work too well, I thought, well, we'll just watch this and she'll be more adventurous, you know? And to some degree it worked because the videos were porn. They were complete. And then she realized, this is like just porn. Well, yeah, but, you know, there's some instructional aspect to it. Isn't there instructional aspects to a lot of porn if you think about it that way?
There's a voiceover.
There wasn't necessarily a voiceover, but
Okay.
yeah.
There's arrows. Yeah,
Yeah.
But I think, let me say this to you. You can sometimes you buy your wife a gym membership and like for Christmas or her birthday, and she does not like that, right? Like it leads to a fight because
What are
she's
you
like,
trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me
Yeah.
I'm fat?
So
I'm out of shape?
I imagine
don't
if
like
you
my
roll
body?
up with a bunch of like how to be better in bed DVDs, like here I got you a present, and it's like, is this a present for me or for you?
It wasn't a present. I just said, I
know,
got
but I'm
these,
just
you know,
saying I could see
yeah, that would have been bad.
someone's feelings being hurt. It's just a tricky one to bring up, so I
It
understand
was
where you're
tricky.
going with it.
It was tricky, but, you know, it did help. But it wasn't
great.
the same
I mean-
kind of porn. You know, it was, you know, vaguely
Yeah.
instructional.
He also it wasn't girl on girl,
No, it was couples.
so that was his mistake. Yeah, this guy. I mean, as soon as you said it, I knew it was going to end in tears because it's such an obvious mistake. It's just a classic. She went further than I thought, but it's not a surprise ending.
Nothing good. So, a studies of couples' sex lives that was published recently found that women have more orgasms with men if they rate the men as more dominant, by the way. And good-looking partners fared better. And basically, so that if they found their partners were more attractive, they're more likely to orgasm at the same time or just after the men, which is, by the way, the optimal time to get pregnant. It was kind of an
Wait.
interesting study.
How can a woman finish after the man? Doesn't he leave as soon as he's done? Doesn't he immediately shut down and fall asleep?
Well, like almost right after, like immediately
Like
after he
deactivating
comes.
a robot. He goes, I finished. Zzz.
Yeah, well, he had to stay inside for a little bit longer, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like she's using his body without his permission.
This is a
That's
study of
unbelievable.
110 couples from a U.S. university, and they were given questionnaires on when they experienced an orgasm, before, after, or at the same time as their partner. Women were asked to rate their own attractiveness out of a scale of 1 to 10, and also rate the dominance or masculinity of their boyfriend or husband. And men were asked similar things: partner's femininity, their own attractiveness and dominance and masculinity, and so forth. And so they just found basically that women are more, and here's something interesting, women are more likely to become pregnant if she has an orgasm 1 minute before the man has ejaculated, or 45 minutes after he's ejaculated. So
45 minutes.
Okay, well, the thing is that sperm lives in the body for several days. And so
What's she doing? But she's spending
she's
45
doing other
minutes.
sexual stuff, and then comes again. I mean, that's
That's a
all.
long
But,
time.
yeah, maybe just, he lost interest, but she has another partner who's still interested because he didn't come.
That's what it feels
I
like.
don't know.
He's left the house and now the pool boys and they're finishing her off. So
Earlier timed orgasms suggest more intense sexual arousal and indeed are associated with greater sexual pleasure, says David Putz, the lead author. Okay, so men's attractiveness and masculinity significantly predicted the women's orgasms, and masculinity and dominance hand in hand. Hand in hand.
yeah,
So, yep.
I think that.
Did you have one you wanted to ask me, or did you want to?
Yeah, I've got one for you, of course. Okay, I've got a great one. So, I went on a date with a woman. I'm mid-30s. She's late 20s. We've been talking for a couple of days. I thought everything was all good. I'm 5'6". She's 5'7". She's 1 inch taller than me. We go to a restaurant for lunch, and one of the first things she said is, "Oh, I didn't realize you were so short. To be honest, I'm not sure I can date you and take this seriously."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "My height's in my profile. Like, I didn't hide it. And we've been talking for a few days. I didn't think this was a big deal for you." And needless to say, 15 minutes later, he pays the bill and storms out of the restaurant because she doesn't let it go.
His mistake
I've
was
been-
paying the bill.
Well, it was $21. He didn't. He didn't leave a lot of.
Well, I mean, at the point when she said, "I don't know if I can date you," that's it. It's over. You know what? It's nice meeting you. Shake hands and leave.
Yeah.
That's what he should have done.
Yeah, I've had this happen to me before quite a few times.
For whatever
There's
reason. I mean, it does, yeah.
For height specifically. Height comes up. There are
Okay.
women who are obsessed with height.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
It's so interesting because like if a woman's like standard is height, it's like, oh, she just has standards. If a guy's standard is like skinniness, it's like he's a monster. In our culture, like women can have standards and men can't. But
Well,
I
my
think
mother
the height thing
was
is
divorced
like-
early on. My mother was, my parents were divorced when I was a baby. So I had the experience of my mother were going on dates, and the next day she would talk about her dates. I mean, obviously not super explicitly, but many times she would say, "Oh, he was such a nice man. I really liked him, but he's too short. I'm not going to go out with him again." It's
did
like
she
that
ever
was the
get
deal
married
killer.
again?
Yeah. Yeah. Someone taller. But that was her deal breaker, was like, if they're too short, that was it. That was the
Yeah.
end. Didn't matter. They were the nicest person
It's-
with a lot of money. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's always interesting because there's nothing you can do about that as a guy. Whereas if a guy
No.
says like, "Oh, I can't be with a woman who's chubby," that's actually fixable, right? But it's
Yeah.
like you're a monster, you're a misogynist, and it's like, well,
You should love her as she is. And fat is beautiful, and there's no fat shaming and all
And
sorts of things.
and short kings and this and that. Yeah, it's always like
Yeah.
I've experienced it, and it's like, well, you don't. It's the same thing as someone saying, "I won't date you because of the color of your skin," which I've also experienced. Like, well, there's nothing I can do about that.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
So I've had both those things, and it doesn't feel very good because you're like, well, it's not even something. Most things I can fix or improve. I'm not going to China to break my legs and like have like really long shins. That's the only option, and I'm not doing it. It takes like 6 months, and like in Katika, that's a real thing. I'm not doing that because it
See,
looks
I
weird.
also think he's giving her a legal. He's right when she said, "I don't think I could date you because you're too short." He said, "Well, you know what? It was in my profile. WTF, lady? What's going on?
Yeah, but what he should have
That's-
said is get out.
Is what?
He should have said get out
Yeah, I know he should have. But
because
it's all okay. However, you could give her credit. Maybe she missed it in the profile, giving a legalistic argument like, well, it was in the profile, legally, that's a legalistic argument. You've lost already. So we might as well say, you know what? You're right. I'm
Well-
too short to go out with you, but
he I think he felt like she was making an accusation, like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
short and you kept it a secret. That's kind of how he heard. That's what he heard. If it's not what she
I,
said.
it doesn't matter. You could say, well,
Yeah.
you know what? You're right, apparently. However, let's maybe have a nice lunch, see what happens. Maybe you'll like me even if I am short. Is that possible?
No,
Okay.
not for someone who
Goodbye.
says it. Not if it's the first thing someone says. It's
Yeah.
such a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know. I do. I do
How
know
would
what
you
mean.
feel if she'd said, "Oh, I didn't realize you were X race," right? Or I didn't realize you were a man. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You can't cure racism. You can't cure heightism that early. And
No. Cannot.
I've been there. It stinks. You just got to move on.
Yeah. That's again
'Cause
why
there are
you want to
plenty
have
of tall
a
women.
process of dating more women. More women,
Yeah.
pipeline process.
He should have had.
Yeah.
That's why you need to have a date booked for 30 minutes later, so that you go, "Oh, I got to go anyways. Have
Well, that's
another
a bit
date."
extreme, but I didn't do
Well-
that. But I knew I could get another date this weekend, no problem. I just did my little system. I get another woman
Yeah.
I go out with, so I didn't have to stress out about it.
Yeah, I mean they
yeah.
got mean to each other before he stormed out, of course, because they both took it
Shouldn't have even
emotionally.
waited. So she says, I'm dating a guy. This is another woman. She says, I'm dating a guy in his 40s. I'm in my 30s. Different woman now. Okay. we haven't had the best relationship, but we try to make it work. So we're having a conversation about anal today.
Amazing.
And I said I tried it. I didn't like it. I was kind of pressured into it, and it was painful, And
Are
he says
there-
he wants to try it, and I go, well,
Wait,
you know what?
Are there women who like it? Is it like, isn't it always the guy's idea?
Yeah, probably.
I've never heard of like women's like, listen, this is my deal breaker. If
You know,
won't
it
put
turns
in,
out
then I'm not
it turns
together.
out something that I've been studying. Men have there's always a pleasure and anal pleasure anyway, but there's also in men a prostate stimulation over the prostate area is very pleasurable. Women have something similar actually. If a man can get in deep enough, there's a part which will stimulate her A spot, which is on the apex of her. Well, it's the top of her vagina,
Mine?
basically.
Oh, okay.
And so she can get very, very stimulated actually with anal if a man has a physical ability endowment to do that or whatever. But that aside, it's it is usually the guy. And she says that I didn't want to do it, and he said, "Well, you know what? It's a deal breaker. If it's not okay with
It's never
you,
the woman's deal breaker.
you don't want to. I don't want to use. I'm gonna lose. We're gonna break up." So she says,
mean-
"I feel like she says he doesn't love me enough to see if it happens organically."
What?
and instead of explicitly saying it's a deal breaker, I'm shocked and lost for words.
Wait. Okay, so she's.
I think he was pretty plain. He says, "I don't really love you. I only want to put it in the rear end there, and if you don't want to do that, I'm going to move on." He was very clear.
But she also said, I want to be romance, is what she's kind of saying, is like, buy me flowers before you put it in. And I get that, but like, she's open to the idea. So I think he jumped the gun on his deal breaker thing.
Terrible.
You gotta
Who would
work
want to
up
hear
to it.
that? Who
Like,
wants
I
to
don't
be
do
pressured
foreplay.
like that? Yeah, who wants to be
I don't-
pressured like that? That's awful.
I didn't like this relationship from the very first sentence, right? When she said like, we don't really
We
get
hadn't
along.
had
but
the
we
best relationship, but we try to make
Yeah.
it work.
If you already
2 years. You shouldn't
she
be
said
trying to
that.
make it work in 2 years. That's too soon.
I didn't even need to hear. As soon as you say we don't have the best relationships, like, well, get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of the house. Like, it's already the way you're describing the relationship is, instead of like it's almost a 10, you're saying it's not a 0. Like, you've already switched it to the opposite scale. It's like the person who's played blackjack and lost all their money. They're just trying to get back to 0, not trying to win any. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to not lose. So that language to me,
He's already
was
lost. Yeah.
before you even got to the butt stuff, I was like, well, you're already unhappy. Like, you don't like doing it. It sounds like it's something special or whatever. It's certainly not my cup of tea, whatever, but why would you want to kind of explore something that's outside your comfort zone with someone that you don't, it's not the worst relationship I've ever been in. Like, it sounds like a bad relationship anyway. So get out. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird that 2 years in, it's a deal breaker. This dude sounds like maybe he needs to meet with another dude, because it's like the butt is super important to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, I just want to get away from your lady bits. But like it's like so
Well, I
silly.
don't agree with that. I think that men watch escalating um,
Yeah. Again,
porn,
fantasy and
escalating
reality.
stuff. You know, yeah, it's
There's
not reality. And they get bored with the same stuff, so then they move on to something else that's more extreme, and then it's more
I
extreme.
mean, but it
And
doesn't
that's the only way they
feel,
get turned on.
but it did, that's what I mean. It doesn't like feel totally different, does it? Like, is there a huge difference in the experience?
I mean,
I'm asking you as an expert.
there's a difference in experience. There's a big difference in experience. But so what? She doesn't want to do it. So what?
Yeah.
You know, and I wanted to bring this up because I don't think anybody should ever be pressured, let themselves be pressured by their partner about doing anything that they don't want to do. Uh, you know, and
Yeah.
I think that's a red flag, really.
Yeah, I don't, and I mean, I think the guy, everything about this guy sounds awful.
Yeah,
And you never want someone who, I just don't even think everyone has like the zone they're comfortable with and then a small experimental zone around like, oh, I'll mess around with that. And then
yeah,
outside that is the, no, like, I don't want
like
to do
an
that.
Overton window, right? About this,
Yeah.
okay, bracketed this and this. But if it's outside of this or this, no way. I can get close to the
And
boundaries, but I'm not going to go past the boundaries.
yeah, and I've been in that experience. I was with a woman once. She's like, hey, go get your belt. And I was like, what? While we're sleeping together. And I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I don't like it.
Did she
I
want
was like, she's
spankings with it, or what did she want?
she wanted me to put it around her neck. And I was like, how do you
Oh,
do that?
choking.
She's like,
Okay.
oh, you put the belt through the loop. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
listen,
Yeah.
no way. Like, no, I was so, because I don't know
Yeah.
the line,
I
right?
wouldn't
Because
do
you have
that
to,
either. Not interested in
I
that.
no, I have no idea because I've never done this. I have no idea how hard you're supposed to do it, where you give her the pleasure but don't go too far. You have to like, there's
Well,
only one way to learn that.
once you have a few that expire, the third one you pretty much know, how
That's what I mean.
you
It
don't go
feels
too
like you
far.
have to go to the
Yeah,
limit to find what the limit is. I don't
it's
want to
horrible.
accidentally knock her out.
I don't even want to do that.
When the belt
I know.
loop gets stuck, the little metal thing gets stuck in the
I
belt.
just, I totally agree
My
with that.
heart
Yeah,
racing. I was like, there's no way. And I've had more
well
than one woman,
outside of my Overton window too. Well outside.
even when it's like, do it with your hands. I was like, and it's come up multiple times, not with my wife, but
Yeah,
with other women. So there are things as a guy, I just want to make it clear that guys can also be like, there's no, I don't want to do that. And as soon as she said belt, I was like, what? I thought the spanking thing first until she explained the complexity of how to choke someone with the belt. Because I had never thought of it, never crossed my mind. So she had to tell me how to do it. I go, yeah, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, just no, there's so many reasons I don't want to do that. It doesn't feel intimate. It feels mean, right? Like, it doesn't feel like romantic at all. And it was like, so, but that's the thing. So the same thing, I think for me is how this lady feels about her bum. And if it's not on the menu, it's not on the menu. You
yeah.
shouldn't make someone do something that makes them uncomfortable
Now, if he
or
wants to get her interested in it, when they're doing it, he could use his finger and lubricate his finger and all that.
that's
And
what she wants. She
eventually,
sounded open, right? She's like, I
yeah,
want you
and
to buy
eventually
me.
she's like, you know what? Let's go the whole hog. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
all. He doesn't have to talk about it either. I think talking about stuff like this is usually very counterproductive.
Wonder, yeah, how you start the conversation. It's such a strange
You
thing.
don't
It's like, do you take her
don't
out to
start
dinner
it.
first, or
Don't
do you
start
just
the
go,
conversation. Don't start
go,
it.
hey,
Just stick your finger in there when
oh
you're
my
having,
gosh,
when you're doing it. I mean, I'm just
just
saying,
start to
or
ask
you don't have to.
forgiveness and ask permission?
Yeah, I mean, just see if she likes it. You can go around the area, just see if she likes it. That's all. Not a big deal. You don't have to talk. It's so stupid. And here's the thing that's interesting. They did an experiment where they had men pleasure themselves with this sort of computer thing in front of them where they had to answer questions. And they find, and this is no surprise, they find that when men are super aroused, when they're ready to finish, they'll be up for anything pretty much, that they wouldn't normally be up for in a very aroused state.
Oh my gosh.
So same thing for women. If she's really into it and really experiencing an amazing
Yeah, but if she's
pleasure,
really
then
against it,
then
I
she
don't
might
want to
like
do
having a
that.
finger there. Then that
Yeah,
leads
I
to
mean,
his unit.
she's she's more open to it than I was expecting, but I don't like
No
how he
talk
brought.
necessary. No talk
You
necessary.
don't have to. That's just weird. It's such a dumb deal breaker.
Yeah,
Like,
it
that's your
just
deal
means he
breaker.
doesn't value her very much. Now here's another one that is another side of the scale, and I hate to. I know we have people in all age groups who listen. So, and this is a common thing. We have a lot of guys in our subscriber base who are older and they're happily married, except for one issue that they're not happy about. This man says, my wife and I are in our 70s. She no longer wants to do it. She doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want to fix it. She says, I'm done.
Yeah.
When I plead that I still want her and I need, to do it with her, she says, I should find some other outlet. I don't know if she means that, if what she's talking about. We married young, high school sweethearts, had children right away. We grew up in an era where it was considered sort of shameful. We were in love. We fumbled around. We figured it out. Okay. I don't really know if she ever really enjoyed it, honestly, although she has had orgasms from oral. So all I know is she doesn't want to do it now. Okay. And I'm not even pushing intercourse necessarily, but she's just not understanding anything. So I don't know what I should do.
I mean, she's retired. It's hard to get someone to put the jersey back on when they've hung it up in the rafters. And
Wait a minute. What was that
they
again?
had a long run at 50, 60 years of this action. And she's like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? That's
What
what
about
she's
the
saying.
jersey? Oh, you're saying retiring her
You know, like when
number.
you're a basketball
Okay.
player, you do your
Yeah,
30
yeah,
years, you
yeah,
retire, you put your
yeah,
uniform in the
yeah.
rafters. Sorry,
Okay.
sports metaphor. I don't know that much about
Okay.
sports too, but that's what I kind of mean. She's like, listen, I don't know that this is when usually we think this means I just don't want to do it with you, but she might just be done. She's late in life. These things happen. So you're more of an expert towards this age area
Well,
than me.
I would say if she met her husband, croaked and she met someone else, she could be a completely different woman. She would be into it. Maybe she'd even be into it in the other orifice like that woman went into. You never know. She could be into all sorts of things. You never know.
But there
because
are
she's
people who they reach a certain age and they go, I don't want to date anyone. I don't want to.
women can lose their libido completely. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
For women, it's very normal to lose libido. Not to say I'm never going to do it again, but it's normal for women to lose their libido completely. And
Yeah.
so my point is, and I always make this point, I say you're not going to feel like doing it, but you need to do it anyway. And once you're doing it, you'll feel like doing it. That's how women are built these days. When you're older, you get turned on when you're actually turned on when you're doing it.
But it's
That's
hard
basically it.
to get
Yeah.
someone in their 70s to change their mind. You know what I mean? Like that's a hard turn. People get set in their ways. And I think that again, I've never been in my 70s, so I don't know, but I think that he's already saying, well, what about if you just and she's like, no, just do it without me. It's an interesting conundrum. Maybe the answer is they just need to watch a girl video together like that other couple tried. Maybe that's the kind of thing you wait until your 70s to try. And she'll get like, wow, I've never thought of it this way. This is a tough one. I think that you certainly can't logic your way out of it. You can't be like, well, allow me to make the perfect argument.
Well, so
But
some women can actually get their hormones are out of whack. We have a course called Upper Drive, which is
yeah,
one of the only courses we have for women also, or transformation. And we show women how they can use small amounts of things like progesterone and DHEA and get a sex
yeah.
drive
There's
again. But they have to want to. Maybe she doesn't want to.
That's what I mean, is that if the
Yeah.
desire is completely gone, it's really hard. If the flip, like you'll never drink again, right? Like you have that switch flipped. It's that if she feels it that strongly, then it's like really, it is what it is.
Well, she says
It's
she should find
interesting.
another outlet. So what exactly does she mean?
Why
Um,
ask her, like, what
yeah.
exactly is okay and not okay? And I'll tell you where I live, people say a different answer than people say in America. A lot of times she's like,
Yeah.
because I live on a small island, and the wife like, as long as it's not someone on the island, I don't care. Or you're not allowed to
Yeah.
fall in love. Or
Yeah. It's just
you're
a
not allowed to get her
mechanical.
own.
It's just,
There's like all
you
sorts of
just
different versions of that I know guys, that's their
so it's a
situation. So I've heard a lot.
negotiated settlement here. Okay, you're turned off. I'm still turned on. What could we agree that I can and cannot do with someone else?
Yeah. Here's my biggest piece of advice. Have that discussion. Don't guess.
Yeah.
Because you never know what they're going to say. And she might be like, listen, you're allowed to watch dirty movies, but that's it. Or she might be like, you can date someone as long as it's not someone that I'm friends with. Who knows?
Or
it's
maybe
only
no
can be
penetrative action. Maybe just wanking together or
no eye
something.
contact.
Yeah.
You're
No
not allowed to.
kissing.
Usually the thing I hear more often when people have
No
this type of
tongue
thing,
kissing.
you're not allowed to fall
Yeah.
in love.
But I
Like
mean, that's
most,
hard to. Sometimes there's no penetrative action. Like it's just wanking each other or whatever. Like you know, I'm just
yeah, that's what I mean. But my advice is the rules for every single couple, it's different. So you have to ask
yeah,
because there's no one who can
yeah,
guess. I would tell you that make sure you ask before you guess wrong. You'll regret that for the rest of your life.
yeah. No, it's time to have. In this case, you do have to have a discussion. That's normally something I don't recommend doing is talking about sex, but in this case, you kind of have to. Do you have another one for me?
Yeah, I still got a couple of these. So yeah, I don't know. I have a couple, but they're pretty negative, so I don't want to do them. I don't. I just sometimes I grab it and I go, I don't like this angle. Here's one that's about parental stuff. So um I married my wife, been together since high school. You know, our daughter is older, and I just told my daughter that she's a spoiled brat and doesn't know how hard life is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is what I was thinking about is that I saw something really good actually. I saw something amazing from Denzel Washington. He was talking about being a dad today, and he goes, when a kid is a criminal or doing something bad, it's already too late. By the time you're interacting with the police or having getting interventions at school, something's already missing at home. Where's the dad? Because the dad's in charge of justice in the house, right? And it was really interesting. He was talking about this. He goes, before we blame society, like where was the dad in this particular situation? So, and here, my first thought is when the dad is like, "Oh, my daughter's so spoiled." It's like, yeah, well, who did it? I always think about that myself too. One of my big worries, right, is that my kids will grow up. I don't know if soft is the right word, but people, you make a bunch of people who are wealthy, they work their way up.
Yeah.
Their kids and don't experience the same struggle, so they don't have the same
Right.
strength of personality. They become like trust fund people, which means they're kind of
Right.
listless.
Sure.
So I think about this as a parent. So whenever you have a child who's too spoiled, it's always not the child's fault because the child is the creation of the parents. So without going into like this whole really detailed story, it just boils down to you done messed up. And if your kid's already 18, it's probably too late to do it, to fix it. But you have to realize that, and this is a hard one. This is my thought. Let me know what you think about this is that some lessons you have to learn the hard way or you never learn them. You have to touch the hot stove once. You have
Yeah.
to fall
True.
over once. The only way to learn to ride a bike is by falling.
And people like
So,
the son or daughter of Bill Gates is not going to be doing certain things. They'll never have these experiences that ordinary people would.
and you get a lot of these super wealthy people, they have the most devastatingly unhappy family lives. They always have like
Yeah.
the world record for the biggest divorces, and their kids do like because the kids have so much money, they do crazy things like change their
Hmm.
name and change.
Yeah.
Sometimes they change their name to like a symbol. It's not even like letters anymore, and they go, and
Yeah.
you can never speak
Yeah.
to me again, but I'll take the money. I mean,
Yeah.
Lord knows I'll never
Yeah.
work, but I will
Yeah.
never, and they create you get these people who inherit huge amounts of money and they're like, I hate capitalism. I hate my parents' capitalism. Like, well, you're living off of it, right? There's this huge disconnect between their behavior and what they say. And it happens. I don't know if it happens as much with families who aren't wealthy, but I know for sure it happens with wealthy families. And the way we become strong is through adversity. But you have to,
Yeah.
as a parent, you don't want your kids to have any adversity, but that's not good. So my wife and I, we always have to find this balance of we let our kids do things that are a little bit dangerous because we're there. I'm like, I would rather my kids
Yeah.
fall when I'm there. And it's a calibration because you never want them to be actually hurt. There's a huge difference between I
But there's
fell
a
and I'm
risk.
bleeding.
But
Yeah.
there's a risk.
But
When I was in France, and many times I've been to France, I was like, there are these parks sometimes I've seen where they'll have this climbing equipment where the kids go really high, those sort of nets that they suspend over something. They're climbing and they're, going hand over hand and they could just fall and be hurt, but it's like, oh, well, no big deal. So it's completely different than America where you would never have things like that. So they want
yeah,
their kids to be taking some kind of reasonable, risks to feel like they're in some kind of danger. They have some kind of agency. And you can't have agency as a child. You have to grow up. You have to learn how to have agency, or you never grow up. You have to learn to put
Yeah.
yourself in danger, know that you can fix it yourself. That's part of growing up. So I agree with you.
Yeah, you lose the ability to solve problems if you've never had to solve a problem. I think this is one thing I think is really interesting. So they've gotten rid of dodgeball now.
Oh, they did.
Yeah,
Dodgeball is where you would hit somebody with a ball, and you have to hit them. Uh,
oh
So you throw the
no,
ball
if
at
that
them.
was where I would get hit. Let me make this absolutely clear. I never did well at
Yeah,
dodgeball. Okay,
yeah. You were in
I
the middle. You were it, or whatever they called it, and you would get
well,
hit
you
by the
have the two
dodgeball.
teams. You're the last one left. But every time I overcame an adversity, or because you don't actually
Yeah,
get hurt, you're not throwing baseballs. You're
no,
throwing those red rubber balls that don't
yeah,
actually hurt.
yeah,
And but you learn the lesson you learn is that I'm capable of more than I thought I was. And we take away more and more of those things. Like we've taken away so many things from gym class. The rope is gone. The running a mile. They keep getting away more and more things. And you don't, it's not just that like, oh, they're raising these kids soft. It's like these kids don't ever get to build self-confidence because self-confidence comes from you do something that's hard and then you
yeah.
succeed. This is why people who have really hard jobs have lots of confidence because they've overcome so many things. And I think that this is just what I think about is like I let my kids. I'll give you an example. My daughter is really highly competitive in martial arts. She's 11
Okay.
and she's trying to compete. She's trying to go international. Okay, she's already trying to do
Wow,
pre-Olympic stuff,
it's amazing.
and she wants to
I
fight
know
in the
that.
knockout division.
What does that mean?
My wife is like, and I was like, you know what? Oh, you gotta. My parents wouldn't let me when I was 15.
What's a knockout division? What does that mean?
You fight until one of you falls asleep.
Oh,
It's
that's
full
terrible.
contact.
I
You
wouldn't let my
knock out.
children do that. I wouldn't let them do
What?
that.
Well, it's better to have it in a completely controlled environment where you're wearing helmets and mouth guards and all the armor and a lot of protection. You very rarely have an actual knockout,
Okay.
right? You're not actually, but it's full contact. But yeah, that's a big question is like, well, she will find out more about herself, right? Than anything else you do. It's like the old saying, like if you want to know who someone is, you have to fight them. It's like a Fight Club saying, which obviously is supposed to be the opposite of everything in the book, but there's something to be said for I had a roommate when I was in my mid 20s who'd never been in a fight, and he was so afraid of being punched. And I was like, I've been punched by a Marine. It was horrible, but it wasn't as bad. It wasn't what I experienced when a Marine. I mean, I did not win that fight or almost win that fight or nearly win that fight. It was a one-way fight. One person was punching, one person was getting hit. But he was more afraid than what I'd actually experienced. And that's the thing that comes from having an experience is that you go, oh, this isn't as bad. Just like the first time you ask someone out and they reject you, it's bad, but not as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Right.
First time you get fired, you think
Right.
you'll never recover from this. The first time you have a big breakup,
Yeah.
and you end
That's
up
right.
in cable. I saw something recently. This girl went through a breakup, and then she asked her dad for a huge amount of money for grief counseling, and he's like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Who?" He goes, "Who died?" Which is my first thought too when I hear
I
grief
didn't. I didn't
counseling.
do any of that when I had a loss. I just, did it. Just bore with it. What's the problem?
Exactly, and
What's
maybe that's why people think we're dinosaurs because we don't believe the answer to a breakup is therapy. And I do think therapy is there for some stuff. I went to therapy for my PTSD, but golly, people, I think that's the end result of you've never had to face any adversity that you
So it
think,
starts very, very early, Jonathan. It starts in the cradle for sure. And here's an example. So, children, this is going to seem really bad, but children, they cry and when
yes,
their babies cry and, then you give them milk or breast, whatever, and then they go back to sleep. At some point, you go, this child doesn't need to be waking up every 2 or 3 hours and I want to get some sleep. So what do? You
stop
let them
doing it.
cry. And
Yeah,
then a day or
let
two,
them cry it
one
out.
night, second night, they're fine. They learn they can
Yeah,
soothe themselves. That's what they call it, self-soothing. They wake up wanting to be fed. They get all mad. They cry, and then they soothe themselves and go back to sleep. and there's no trauma, no problem with it. And that's a certain parenting style. I had a part where one of my children would always be coming into our room all the time and at night, constantly, every night, constantly. And sometimes people are okay with that. I have someone I know whose daughter slept in the marital bed for till she was 10. I'm not okay with that. What do? We lock the door. One night he comes in, he bangs on the door. I put on these headphones so I didn't have to hear him. He falls asleep by the door, and the next day he doesn't do it again, and that was the end of it. That was the end of it. So that's because he realized he could soothe himself, that he didn't need to come to his parents' bed, that he could handle it himself. That's when it starts. So you could take it to an extreme. I don't think we were ever mean or cruel. Some parents would think that, but I don't think so. But I really believe that you should have children grow up as quickly as possible, be as autonomous as possible when they're ready. If we had our kids do their own laundry when they were 10 or 11 years old, why not? Why shouldn't they do their own laundry? They could pack their own lunch. Why shouldn't they pack their own lunch? That's my view. And so our kids grew up and they've, been successful as adults. I know other people who have children that are still children living at home in their 30s. They never, what is the word? Failure to, what is it? Eject? What's the word for it?
Launch?
For leaving? Launch. They never launched. They never launched.
Yeah,
That's cruel.
I think it's self-sufficiency. And the way you learn what you're capable of is by doing things that you didn't think you were able to do, doing things
that you
that
didn't
are
want to
hard.
do, and you didn't think you could, and you didn't want to do. Exactly.
And you have to, it's the only way to grow. But there is a line. Obviously, you never want to do something where there's actual danger. Your kids could actually get hurt, or
Right.
they're actually,
Right.
you don't want to actually hurt them. But if you protect them for everything, if you just wrap them in foam, then they never get strong, right? If they never do a push-up, they never develop any muscles. So it is a balance. So if you're worried that your kid is spoiled, it's probably like, I mean, it's definitely the parents messed up. Like it's just that's what happened. And you see it where the longer you wait until you say, all right, now you're in charge of your own destiny, the more child abuse. This is why people post a lot of stuff on like social media that they shouldn't. Like, I'm in my mid 30s, my dad cut off my allowance. What am I supposed to do to survive? It's like, well, I mean, people are like, people watching that video are not on your side. Like, see a ton and I saw a video today from someone who says, I want to be with a guy who his money is in charge of the family and all the family bills, and my money is just for me. And I was like, well, you sound like a real treat. Like, at least you put it out front, right? But that's the thing. That's
Yeah.
a maturity. Because if you don't see relationships as a partnership, you see relationships as what is it, like a parasite? Like, oh, I'm in a relationship, I take, but I give nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that feel this way. I think this is why you hear a lot, and this is what a lot of men are complaining about. Oh, every woman just says, you go, what do you bring to the table? And she goes, I am the table. And you go, well, you obviously don't know what the word table means because it's not a compliment. It's a horrible thing to call someone. If I called the woman a table, she would not be happy, right? That's how you know you shouldn't say that yourself. Or they'll be like, this woman goes, here's what I bring to the table. I'm attractive and I have a great personality. And I was like, I've never met
If you have
anyone
to
who's
say that, yeah.
nobody
If you have to
says
say
that
that, you're not.
that's one of the first laws of personalities. If someone has to tell you they're humble, they're not. Like,
Yeah.
anytime someone tells you about something good about them, and it was like, well, you're kind of breaking yourself down into like you have no human characteristics. The only thing you bring is beauty. Like where's the part of you that's a person? Like that's all missing. Like my wife is pretty, but that's a component of what I like about her, but it's not the main thing. It's not let alone the only thing. And I think that a lot of people, and I think it's connected. I think bad parenting leads to bad adults, and we've just created more and more immaturity. Like you watch these videos of like PE from the 1970s, and everyone is skinny, and they're doing
Right.
stuff that we would never do in PE now.
Right.
Like everyone passes the presidential fitness medal, and everyone can run a 6-minute mile, and all of these things that now nobody can
We didn't
do.
have to run a 6-minute mile. We had to run for 6 minutes.
Either way, now the number of people now that can't do that, or they're in
Right.
high school and they can't jump or touch their toes.
Right.
And I've never been athletic, but I've always pursued all of that stuff because I know it's important. I was always on sports teams and trying things and always trying to escape, the bad decisions I was making
I was
about
trying
my
to get out
health.
of
But
PE. I was just trying to get out of PE, which
oh
I
no, man,
generally did.
I was into
Hated
it.
it.
I've always been into PE. I don't like, even though, and I'm bad at it. So my perspective comes from someone who I never won. I was never the first pick. I was the last person
Wow,
picked all
surprising,
the.
surprising that because
But
that
it's
sounds very negative, really.
yeah, but it's why I'm tough. Like that's the thing is you have. I would rather face that at school at PE where it's not a big deal than in life the first time you get fired and you go, oh my gosh, this is the
Right.
first time someone's not picked me. I don't know how to deal with it. You are gonna have bad things happen to you. They just are. You're gonna have things that are your fault, things that are not your fault, things that are unfortunate, things that are challenges. The sooner you get used to those, the sooner you get strong. And that's what I mean, is that there's a
Well, we
lot
had
of
we had read a
value.
book at the time. It was by Rudolph Drakers, this child rearing expert at the time that was very big. It still is. And his whole thing was to be firm about things and just hands off, let kids deal with things on their own, so they're not in danger. But so, you're not going to be around forever. So you want your kids to be able to be self-sufficient and grow up and cope on their own. And that's what we grew up with. Like a lot of parents today have an unconscious wish for their kids to be their friend and their companion for the rest of their life. They are not raising their kids to be independent because they don't want their kids to be independent. They just want their kids to be at home all the time. I think that's very selfish, and I see that a lot now, and at least in the
Yeah,
United States.
we dealt with that because I wanted to homeschool the kids, so they'd be
Yeah,
around me all the time. And they
right.
all, my daughter at 3 said, I want to start going to school. She was very
Yeah.
young. So she
Yeah.
started
About
going to
six,
school
she'll
a few
say, I
months
want
ago.
to do homeschooling now, or 7.
But you know what? It's you have they kids have a natural desire to go out of the nest. You have to stop
Right.
them, right? They already are going, we
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
they're already, they want to do sleepovers, which are very when you're a
Yeah.
parent, right? When you're a kid, all you want to do is a sleepover. But when you're a
Hmm.
parent, all you want to do is like not because it's like
Yeah.
this my kid, it's out of my control. And it's you have to let your kids soar a little bit. And you have to kind of
Yeah.
let them because they will. If you let them, they will grow and push themselves out. But you have to really actively keep them in the nest. To keep your kids from
Yeah.
maturing, you have to do a
Yeah.
lot of things
So
active.
don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. I've got
Yeah,
one
they want to
last
do
one
this.
for you to ask you about.
Okay.
Okay, so just as a preface, I kind of relate to this quite a bit because it's sort of a part of my life. Um, so basically, my grandparents, they don't approve of my relationship because my boyfriend is black. They don't want me to marry him.
Okay.
I don't know what to do. I don't want to lose my boyfriend and I don't want to lose my grandparents. What should I do?
Well, you're gonna lose your grandparents because they're old. It's
Exactly.
inevitable.
Yeah.
How old is this person? Did she
In their
say?
20s, mid 20s.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I don't know. That's really a strange one.
Well,
You don't
okay, it's
you
real
just don't
easy.
encounter that
Don't
much.
give up a guy for your grandparents, okay? You do what you think you should do. You're an adult.
Yeah,
We just talked about this. And so if they don't like it, that's their problem.
if that's
They'll
really
lo-
the reason, if it's really just that, right?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is that.
No, I know. If it's just that, then yeah, that's like a dumb thing. But if they're like, is a bunch of other stuff going on, like, and that's just part of it, that's different, right? If the guy's like a bad guy, like if the guy's not nice to you and other stuff, and she's projecting, but I don't think that's what it is. I'm just saying you have to be. It's just very rare that people go straight up race.
You know what? It could happen at the beginning, but once she has the wedding, they'll come to the wedding. Everything will be fine. They'll meet
Oh,
him. They'll like
I don't
him.
know. I know of
Could be.
situations where people stick to their guns, but you have to. If this is the guy you want to spend the rest of your life with, which it sounds like, I mean, she's mid 20s, so she's in the right age to kind of make that decision. And we have this in my family. One of my cousins, his wife is black, and they're from Louisiana. And I remember he told this story that he was like, I went on a road trip with my stepdad. So his stepdad's black, he's white, through Alabama, and they went to a gas
Mhm.
station. And the stepdad's like, listen, don't hug me. The guy's like, what do you mean? He's like,
Mhm.
round here. So he was like, but they grew up together, like he'd known him his whole life.
I don't
Like
think
to
that's
that,
true anyway. I don't think that's true. I mean,
well, this is a
your story's true,
while
but
ago.
today. A while
No,
ago
this is
would be
like
true.
40
Not
years ago.
today.
I'm
Yeah.
talking like 40
Okay.
years ago in the middle of
That makes
nowhere.
sense. Then it makes
And it
sense.
was like,
Yeah.
that's what I mean is like that stuff is more and more rare to
Yeah.
encounter
Yeah. And the
these days.
parents are old, grandparents are older. And so they're in the old
Yeah, but I mean,
space of race.
his stepdad was like, "Oh, we can't do this around here because like people around here don't want to see that." Not, I don't want to be your friend. He was like, this is a part of town where you know what I mean?" And he was like, he encountered that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you run into these things. I've run into situations before in the South. I was invited to join an organization that I was very
Yeah.
surprised. It's like, you guys
Yeah.
are
Right.
pretty anti-Jew. It's one of your main credences. They're like, that's not our focus right now. I was like, yeah, but not right for me. So you just never know what you're going to run into. I didn't know the Klan was still active until I was invited. I was like, I thought you guys were, I didn't know you still were a thing. So, but yeah, I mean, the best thing to say is she's not going to win. This is an unwinnable situation.
Well,
You're
I
either,
think a lot of times you could convince the grandparents that they're going to lose
you
because
have to
you're not
risk,
going to change your behavior and they're
right?
going
So
to lose
you
their
have to either,
granddaughter.
her
So,
two
you
choices
know,
are stay with the guy, break up with the guy. And if she breaks up with the guy, she will never forgive her grandparents,
no,
right? Because then
that
you'll
would
be
be
like, oh, you
terrible.
cost me my
Maybe
true
he's
love.
the
And
one
if
that
she,
they'll be married and maybe they'll be, an item for the rest of their life and you don't want to give
yeah,
that up.
it's a tough situation because the other hand, what if they get married, doesn't work out, they're divorced in 6 months, she has to go back to her grandparents? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, well,
So
yeah.
there's risk in everything. But yeah, you have to, if it's really a serious relationship and it sounds like she's talking about marrying the dude, then like that's pretty serious. And you have to thread that needle. But I know people whose parents did not come to the wedding. So I've been around
Yeah,
that.
it
I was,
we
you
are
just,
at the end of our time. So thank you so much for being here. Every week we have Men's Mayhem here. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell icon. Make sure that you get an alert so you can hear some very entertaining and informative conversation next week, every Wednesday. Thank you so much. I hope and believe God is shining his light and love on you, and I will see you next week. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye everyone. Enjoy the mayhem.